About to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength. Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Quick service announcement brought to you in part by Warriors.
Damn, that shit was dope.
And welcome back. It's another Warrior Creed live stream with me, the radical Majid Nawaz. And congratulations to every human on this planet. I think sufficient time has passed by now for us to be able to say to you all, congratulations. We seem to have averted World War III, and peace is well and truly on the cards. This is just the beginning, not the end. There is a great deal more that remains to be done. But we are able to say well done and congratulations to an era of an American peace in the Middle East. The image on your screens now, that's the title for today's stream. The image is of an American B-2 bomber with a flame coming from the back of it in the likeness of Donald Trump's flaming red hair or yellow hair. And either side of the wings, the image also depicts as if the wings are Trump's hands holding up stop signs to both Iranian and Israeli missiles coming at each other from opposite directions. And yes, that is the topic for today, an American peace. History has been made. We, of course, our regulars will know from last week's stream and last week's Radical Dispatch said that this is what was coming, that nothing could stop what is coming, and that a grand regional settlement for peace is coming, not only for the Middle East in the form of the Abraham Accords, but above that, a larger covenant between warring parties to make peace and allow for the rising once again of the Middle East, to allow for that region to become peaceful and prosperous. So first of all, well, let's begin with that, and that is news of the peace and what's happened since then. Our immediate message sent first thing this morning is on your screens now, and it reads, "Good morning, humans. Congratulations on the peace. It will take many people most of the day to process that Trump did exactly as we've been saying he would for years by canceling World War III and brokering peace between Israel and Iran last night. This is just the beginning. A grand regional settlement for peace is coming. People today will go through the stages of grief about being totally wrong. They will hate the fact that everything they say they wanted for the region is being delivered by Trump, a man they hate, and was forecasted years in advance by us, who they also hate. It will take a while for them to realize that their real problem was always their own hate. And many will never realize it. Pakistan was right to nominate Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize, and Trump will get it and deserves it. The shadow knows." That's what's happened. Of course, some concern existed after that peace was declared last night that the Iranians and the Israelis would not stick to it. Skirmishes, minor skirmishes after a ceasefire has been agreed, and both parties are not denying they agreed to the ceasefire. Minor skirmishes are quite normal as both warring sides, or all warring sides, jockey for position in an attempt to save face before their own nations, because indeed this is a humiliation for the hardliners who were hoping for Armageddon. And you saw some of their cheerleaders online and offline who were also hoping for Armageddon. The warmongers were not interested in this peace. If you saw last week's stream and indeed read last week's dispatch, we made it very clear. Netanyahu's plan was to circumvent the peace using war. That's why he struck at Iran in the middle of the peace negotiations between Trump and Iran. And that's why Trump spent 12 days working out exactly what his next move would be. He knew he had 12 days because, as he announced, he would be making a decision within 2 weeks. That 2-week time frame is relevant because Israel was unable to maintain its air defense against the Iranian retaliation for more than that, which is why they were desperate for American intervention. They were calling for bunker buster bombs to be used against the Fordow nuclear uranium enrichment site. Trump did not use bunker buster bombs. Only the Americans had those bombs, and therefore only the Americans could have brought this war to an end. The Netanyahu, the Likud Zionists under Netanyahu, were desperate for Trump to use those bombs because they could not maintain their air defenses against the hypersonic missiles coming at them from Iran for much longer without American reinforcements. But when they formally requested America to join the war, America had already politely declined. So their next option was to try and bump President Trump into using the bunker buster bombs on the Fordow nuclear reaction site. That would have meant America entering the war because it would have been the use of weapons, novel use of weapons in a war that had not yet been used and that only the Americans could have used, those bunker buster bombs. And so that is unavoidably an announcement of America entering the war. Trump did not do that. Trump instead, as you're about to see over the course of this stream, Trump instead paid a token gesture to Netanyahu's demand and merely blew up the entrance to Fordow, sealed the entrance. It was a missile that didn't penetrate beneath the surface of the underground bunker, and thereby removed Netanyahu's pretext for war and forced both parties back to peace negotiations, resulting in a ceasefire. That's how it went down. It's how we said to you last week it would go down, that Netanyahu was attempting to circumvent the peace. He would not succeed. Go back to last week's stream, read last week's Radical Dispatch. It's all in there, but it doesn't matter if you're not, if you don't, because we're going to show you again the receipts here as well. So keep in mind, this is what's just happened. Good morning, humans. Congratulations on the peace. So far, as of airing, the peace has actually held. We're going to come to that as well. And this is what we said in last week's dispatch. There you go, reported 18th of June. Reading from the text, as we will explain below. Netanyahu timed the launch of these attacks in order to scupper ongoing peace talks, nuclear peace talks between Trump and Iran. In launching war to subvert peace, Netanyahu has formed. Even former Israeli PM Yair Lapid has now claimed that Netanyahu facilitated the October the 7th terrorist attacks by funding Hamas. All the receipts for all those claims are in last week's dispatch. You can go back and read it for yourselves, but this is just framing the stream today. To continue reading from last week's dispatch, 18th of June, we said, how long can Israel hold out? Netanyahu's trap seems to have been sprung on himself. And then we reported from the Times of Israel, Israel asked the US to join the military campaign against Iran, but the US rejected the request. And then we continued. The ongoing US posture has been to ease tensions rather than to escalate. We stood by that analysis despite the hot and cold winds coming up against us with ferocity. Nevertheless, we stood by that view that Trump's entry into the war would only be to de-escalate, not to escalate this conflict, with an eventual aim of bringing them back, both parties back to the peace negotiations. Many doubting Thomases doubted not only us, who were we, but doubted MAGA and the power of Trump over the course of the last week. And when Trump did strike at Fordow, and as we've said, it was only a surface level strike. He did not use the bunker buster bombers, and we're going to come to all of that in a moment. But when Trump did strike, many, even nominally inside the MAGA camp, those who, some of them may have been latecomers to MAGA, some of them who flinched at the 2020 election fix against Trump, some of them who flinched at the 2020 election fix against Trump, flinched again over the course of the last week. There's a pattern you will begin to see, and that is that there are some in the MAGA camp who are very fast, very quick to jump off the gravy train the minute they assume that the gravy is about to come to an end. Of course, they then started predicting World War III. Some, even in MAGA, started calling for his impeachment. In MAGA, ostensibly in MAGA social media influences, started calling for Trump's impeachment and began claiming that Trump had just sparked World War III. We always took the view from last week, from months and years ahead, and up until today, that view has been vindicated, that Trump's intervention by striking at Fordow on a surface level was a de-escalation rather than an escalation of war. And so, as you will see on your screens right about now, we published it as it happened. And we've said this is increasingly looking like a de-escalation step not an escalation step. Peace is not only still possible, but is still probable. Hold the line. And you can see the blaze there from today using pretty much that language. Trump's strike wasn't an escalation, it was an exit. People quickly catching up, which is a good thing. Now, what had happened was, as we said from last week, and many of you may want to rewatch last week's stream or reread last week's dispatch to contextualize everything we're saying here, President Trump made his aim very clear from the beginning. Trump's aim was a denuclearized Iran. This was not Netanyahu's aim. Netanyahu's aim, as we played receipts for you over the many decades, had always been regime change in Iraq, in Libya, and in Iran. That had always been Netanyahu's aim. Trump's aim and Netanyahu's aim diverged the minute Trump started saying Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. Of course, by striking at Fordo, Trump removed the pretext that was being used to justify war and exposed Netanyahu's aim as being regime change, because if Netanyahu did not come back to the table, he would have revealed his hand that he was using the nuclear issue as an excuse and was actually really seeking regime change. So Trump striking at Fordo removed that pretext of Netanyahu and forced him back to the negotiating table after he sought to scupper the peace. And this is why, over the course of the week, we published this. We said Trump clarifies his disagreement with Tucker Carlson. In matters of international warfare, one must always be prepared to fight for peace. This is an articulation of his peace through strength doctrine, which is sound. Trump's aim is denuclearization. A very large coalition of various agendas globally can get behind that with him. That is not Netanyahu's aim. Netanyahu's aim is all-out war and regime change. Trump will achieve his aim. Netanyahu will not. This week's Free Radical Dispatch below brings all the receipts. So that we published before Trump struck Iran. Keep in mind, we published that. And here is Trump clarifying that his aim was denuclearization. And it was from there we began to see exactly how he would not only diverge from Netanyahu, who attempted to spring the trap of war on Trump, but also how he would eventually himself trap Netanyahu with peace. And here is Trump over the course of the week before his strikes, responding to the criticism coming from MAGA, such as from Tucker Carlson, worried, rightly so, that he was about to launch a new war.
Have you seen the Tucker Carlson Senator Ted Cruz interview? It seems like this issue on whether or not the United States should strike is kind of dividing a lot of your supporters.
No, my supporters are for me. My supporters are America first. They make America great again. My supporters don't want to see Iran have a nuclear weapon. Tucker's a nice guy. He called and apologized the other day because he thought he said things that were a little bit too strong, and I appreciated that. And Ted Cruz is a nice guy. I mean, he's been with me for a long time. I'd say once the race was over, he's been with me ever since, right? But very simple. If they think that it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon, then they should oppose me. But nobody thinks it's okay. People that don't want, I don't want to fight either. I'm not looking to fight. But if it's a choice between fighting and them having a nuclear weapon, you have to do what you have to do. Maybe we won't have to fight. Don't forget, we haven't been fighting. We add a certain amount of genius to everything, but we haven't been fighting at all. Israel's done a very good job of that. But we'll see what happens. The bottom line is they can't have nuclear. And if I can't imagine that Ted Cruz said it's okay for Iran to have nuclear, including Tucker. I don't think Tucker says it's okay. The problem is then they get themselves into a thing. They don't want them to have nuclear, but then they say, well, we don't want to fight. Well, you're going to have to make a choice because it's possible that you're going to have to fight for them not to have nuclear. And it's interesting because I did ask Tucker, I said, well, are you okay with nuclear weapons being in the hands of Iran? And he sort of didn't like that. He didn't want to really, but he sort of didn't like that. And I said, well, if it's okay with you, then you and I do have a difference. But it's really not okay with him. Therefore, you may have to fight. And maybe it'll end, and maybe it'll end very quickly. But there's no way that you can allow, whether you have to fight or not, you can allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon because the entire world will blow up. I'm not going to let that happen.
So that was Trump before the strikes, making very clear his aim, which was that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Keep in mind, we spent most of the beginning of last week's stream and the dispatch demonstrating that that was not Netanyahu's aim. Netanyahu, for decades, had been calling for regime change, not only in Iraq, but had got his way in Iraq and Libya too. And so once it became clear that their aims were different, the way forward became even clearer. And that would be that Trump would go on to deny the pretext that Netanyahu was using to goad Trump into the war, and that was they're hours within their ability to reach nuclear capability, and we have to stop them. Trump said, fine, if that's what you're worried about, boom, there we are. We can, he said very clearly, we can strike where we want, when we want, but there don't have to be civilians inside, and that's exactly what happened. Again, go back to last week's stream and dispatch, and you will see video of Trump saying there are two ways to do this. One is to strike with everybody inside. One is to strike with nobody inside. What became very clear by the end of it is Trump chose his way, no civilian casualties, over Netanyahu's way, which is constant civilian casualties. And that's why when Trump did drop the bombs on Fordo, which were not bunker busting bombs, it appears very clearly from the evidence that is available that when Trump did so, he provided forewarning to the Iranians. And as you can see here, we've written they emptied the building with a pre-warning and then blew up the entrance. Because as you can see from the satellite image, satellite images show damage to the entryways to Iran's underground nuclear site Fordo, but no enormous crater. Therefore, no enormous crater means no bunker buster bomb, by the way, was dropped. And so that's what happened. President Trump provided the Iranians with a pre-warning, said, look, we're going to blow up the entrance to this thing so that nobody uses the excuse of you guys developing nuclear weapons as an excuse to goad us into fighting a head-on one-on-one war against you guys. So let us just do this. Here's a warning. It's going to happen. No one has to die. And of course, that's how it transpired. Nobody did die. And you can see again from this satellite imagery by Zero Hedge, it says satellite imagery flags unusual activity at Iran's Fordo nuclear site days before the US strike. And you can see there in the red box what looks like a convoy of vehicles. It's evident that the site was evacuated prior to Trump striking. Again, evidence that a warning was given. And even voices, quite critical voices from inside Iran, such as Professor Marandi, have said the same. You can see there on your screens, General Dan Kane, head of the US Joint Chiefs of Staff, stated that the strike group approached Iran undetected and that only a small circle of US leaders knew in advance. Odd statement. As an ordinary citizen, I said in multiple X spaces last night that the attack would happen within hours. That's because a pre-warning was indeed given. And that is something, again, we're going to continue to demonstrate as we continue with showing you these slides in this stream. But what happened then when Trump dropped that bomb on Fordo? Our response again here was immediate. Last night's US precision attack on Iran that left no casualties was part of a many months long negotiation between Trump and Iran that had started and was already evident when the Iranians and Russians voluntarily withdrew from Syria. A grand regional settlement for peace is coming. The Abraham Accords of Peace will come, and Pakistan was right to nominate the man who will help us achieve this grand peace for a Nobel Peace Prize. Hold the line. And so that's, again, demonstrating why we were saying that the trajectory of all of this was towards peace, because the negotiations between Trump and Iran are actually not between Trump and Iran and didn't just start this week. They are indeed negotiations between Trump and Putin. And those negotiations between Trump and Putin, when they agree them at the top there, they ensure that those within their spheres of influence who are dependent upon them for rearming and for supplies and backup, in other words, their client states, must adhere to what they agree at the top there between Trump and Putin. They have to. They have no other choice because their entire war machine is being propped up by Trump and Putin. So when Trump and Putin agreed that this war would come to an end, you saw that initially with the US unilateral withdrawal from Afghanistan and the return of the Taliban to power. You then saw that in the unilateral withdrawal of the Russian Navy from Syria and the withdrawal of the Iranian troops from Syria, allowing for the fall of Assad, providing sanctuary to Assad in Moscow and for Jolani or Ahmad al-Shara to take over in Syria. The same thing happened. The Russians withdrew their navy. That's what led to the Iranians to withdraw, and it led to the collapse of Assad's Syrian tyrannical dictatorship. That would not have happened if the Russians did not withdraw their navy. Why did the Russians withdraw their navy? And that is because they had already reached an agreement with Trump in his first term, and Trump demonstrated all of that with the withdrawal of the American troops from Afghanistan. This is a quid pro quo, and we're going to explain how those chips will fall in a moment. But that's why it's important to understand that this was all months in the making. Nothing could turn it back. Attempting to speak out against this peace now, though of course the warmongers are and will continue to attempt to break this peace, but it's like whistling against the wind. There are forces far, far bigger at play here than Trump, Putin, Netanyahu, or Khamenei, or indeed social media influencers. Nothing can stop what is coming, and a grand regional peace is inevitable. And so this peace had been negotiated for months, and we can see here on your screens now, this from the 28th of May is actually comms from Trump to the Iranians. You'll see, we're going to play the video for you in a second, but just to read you the quote: "We can blow up whatever we want, but nobody getting killed. We can blow up a lab, but nobody's going to be in a lab, as opposed to everybody being in a lab and blowing up," right? Two ways of doing it. And we've commented off the back of that quote. Trump entered the negotiation with his way: no civilian deaths. And he's saying, there's the Israeli way with people inside. Pick who you want to talk to and let's make a deal. This is, remember, from the 28th of May, long before the attack, the Netanyahu's attack was made in an attempt to scupper the peace. Trump already had forewarning and told the Iranians as well that there was his way or Netanyahu's way. This was always going to be the case.
Did you warn Prime Minister Netanyahu against taking some sort of actions that could disrupt the talks there in a phone call last week?
Well, I'd like to be honest. Yes, I did. Next question, please.
Just last on sanctions.
I did, yeah.
If Senate Republicans want to push
It's not a warning. I said I don't think it's appropriate.
What exactly did you tell him? Did you
I just said I don't think it's appropriate. We're having very good discussions with him, and I said I don't think it's appropriate right now. Because if we can settle it with a very strong document, very strong, with inspections and no trust. I don't trust anybody. I don't trust anybody. So no trust. I want it very strong where we can go in with inspectors. We can take whatever we want. We can blow up whatever we want, but nobody getting killed. We can blow up a lab, but nobody's going to be in the lab, as opposed to everybody being in the lab and blowing it up, right? Two ways of doing it. Yeah, I told him this would be inappropriate to do right now because we're very close to a solution. Now, that could change at any moment, could change with a phone call. But right now, I think they want to make a deal, and if we can make a deal, save a lot of lives.
Remember, that was from the 28th of May, before Netanyahu even bombed Iran in an attempt to scupper Trump's attempts for peace. And he made it very clear that there were two ways to do this, and we can do it without anybody dying, which is what he eventually did after Netanyahu entered the war and attempted to scupper the peace. Trump removed that pretext of Netanyahu, warned the Iranians, and did it without any civilian casualties. And you can see here over the course of the week, even right down to the prior notice given, we forecasted it exactly as it occurred. From the top of your screens there, wherever they strike back, that's the Iranians against Trump's strike at Fordo, wherever they strike back, and they will, the courtesy given by Trump to Iran at Fordo will be returned. There will be prior notice given. And then look at the bottom of the screen there by the Spectator Index, when Iran did respond. Breaking: Iran coordinated missile attack, US base in Qatar with the Qatari officials, and gave advanced notice in attempt to minimize casualties. And again, all these receipts will be published tomorrow. And even Trump directly confirmed that they reciprocated by giving pre-notice of the Iranian response to the US attack on Fordo. And you can see it here on Trump's Truth Social, and we'll just read it for you. Iran has officially responded to our obliteration of their nuclear facilities with a very weak response, which we expected, and have very effectively countered. There have been 14 missiles fired, 13 were knocked down, and one was set free because it was headed in a non-threatening direction. I am pleased to report that no Americans were harmed and hardly any damage was done. Most importantly, they've gotten it all out their system. And notice he highlights the word system there. Very, very interesting. They've gotten it all out of their system. In other words, face-saving measure. It was all a pre-noticed warning that was given already just to save face so they could arrive at the peace negotiations. To continue reading, and there will hopefully be no further hate. And here's the key line. I want to thank Iran for giving us early notice, which made it possible for no lives to be lost and nobody to be injured. Perhaps Iran can now proceed to peace and harmony in the region, and I will enthusiastically encourage Israel to do the same. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President of the United States. That's how it went down. Iran gave pre-notice after America gave Iran pre-notice over Fordo. Those pre-notifications meant 0 casualties in both cases. Netanyahu was then found himself stuck because the pretext he used for war, which was the nuclear issue, had just been removed by Trump at Fordo. And he then had to make a choice. Does he continue with the war, betraying his own motive, which is regime change, or does he come back to the peace table knowing that he cannot continue the war without Trump? And if he did continue it on his own, he'd have to face Iran on his own, which would mean certain defeat. Why? Because there's only so long they could maintain the air defense shields without being resupplied, and Trump would be angry with them by that time if they didn't come back to the peace negotiations again, which we're going to make very clear for you in a moment. So that's what happened, and of course Netanyahu capitulated and realized that his attempts to scupper the peace were no longer tenable and returned to the peace negotiations, and clearly that's when this happened. You can see there President Trump's message on the 23rd of June at 4:02 p.m. in capital letters. Congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their in-progress final missions for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war will be saluted by the world. During each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful. On the assumption that everything works as it should, which it will, I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, courage, and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war. This is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel, God bless Iran, and God bless the Middle East. God bless the United States of America, and God bless the world. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. Of course, if regulars who have been following our live streams, have been following our dispatches, will know, as is on your screens now, even from back in April, that this has been coming for a long time. Radical Media reported, headlined, Trump kickstarts Iran-US talks, grand regional settlement for peace is coming. That's exactly what's just happened. Many of you would have heard us use that phrase, grand regional settlement for peace. It hasn't concluded yet. It's started. It needs to continue until the issue of Israel and Palestine is settled. And then, of course, you'll have Arab and Muslim recognition for Israel in return for Israeli recognition of a Palestinian state. And Israel, this will happen last. This will all come at the end. Israel will be saved to last. And then we'll have the grand regional settlement for peace. Of course, as this was all unfolding, as we stated earlier, many were incredulous and were unable to process and comprehend that this is actually what's happening. Of course, people are living in denial. We mentioned earlier in our good morning message we showed you at the start of this stream that people will today go through the various stages of grief, primarily because they will be unable to accept that President Trump, a man they hate, has achieved everything in the Middle East that they dreamed of. Of course, they will be unable to accept that we, also who they hate, were telling them all along that this is what would happen. But it isn't just those in the West and even ostensibly within the MAGA camp, who've been somewhat hyperventilating over what's been going on. Even renowned and noted Russian thinker Alexander Dugin has been somewhat incredulous and in disbelief that this was going to happen. In the middle of the screen, it's a bit small, we hope you can read it, but there he is, effectively in the middle there, predicting World War III. And he is saying it will mean total annihilation and World War III. We made it very clear that calm heads are needed, that this would not indeed result in World War III. And after the ceasefire, at the bottom of the page, you can see Dugin still critical, saying, ceasefire is accepted by both parties. Lesson, the more you kill, the closer is peace. Very dangerous. which is a strange way of looking at the events as they unfolded. So he said, well, perhaps instead you just hyperventilated there for a little bit, bro. Relax. But some people, as we said, will find it very, very difficult to accept the fact that Donald Trump has brought both parties to heel. And as a result, there are warmongers on all sides desperate to prove him wrong and break the peace. But we've said, do not worry and do not fall for the panic. There are vested interests on all sides who do not wish to see peace but war. The ceasefire will hold. There will be peace, and it will be contagious by the grace of Allah. And of course, why? Because since that message, there have been parties attempting to break the peace. And Trump, as the enforcer of this peace, has not tolerated what's been going on since. And in fact, as we're about to show you, has been very vocal speaking against those warmongers who are attempting to use war to circumvent the peace. Here is Trump there. The Spectator Index reports, Trump says Israel and Iran both violated the ceasefire. Our commentary, it is done. We ain't budging. They have a choice. Peace was a trap all along. Nothing can stop what is coming. And that's because after the ceasefire was agreed, there was some confusion about who between Israel and Iran was lobbying missiles upon whom and who was returning the fire. But the missiles didn't actually fully stop when they were meant to stop. And this is what happened next.
I don't think so, but I'm not happy that Israel's going out now. There was one rocket that I guess was fired overboard. It was after the time limit, and it missed its target. And now Israel's going out. These guys got to calm down. It's ridiculous. I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either. All I do is play both sides.
Well, Trump went further and he posted this on his Truth Social about Israel. He said, Israel, in capital letters, all of it. Israel, do not drop those bombs. If you do, it is a major violation. Bring your pilots home now. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. And the video speeches that he was giving about Netanyahu being the warmonger in this regard got even more intense. Have a listen to this.
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too. Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
I mean, we couldn't have put it better ourselves. President Trump put his foot down, completely put his foot down. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. And this is what happened next on your screens right now. Reported by Haaretz, after Trump demands Israel calm down, the IDF jets fly back. Plans scaled back to solely strike Iranian military radar. It was done. There's no way they're going to go against him. Nothing can stop what is coming. It's done. As we said, it's done. We ain't budging. They have no choice. Peace was the trap all along. Nothing can stop what is coming. It's done, and slowly people are waking up. As you can see here by even Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Is it me or did Trump and the Iranians are conniving to play the Israelis? And our commentary on that. Is it me or are you waking up? Because the point is that Trump is no longer willing to tolerate the warmongering coming from Netanyahu. Of course, the warmongering coming from the Shia Islamist regime in Iran has always been known and acknowledged by Trump, but it was the Netanyahu side that had not been acknowledged. And there you have it. It's openly acknowledged. President Trump is not in a mood to tolerate warmongering from any of the sides. This peace will hold. And take a look at what we, again, wrote in last week's dispatch and review now today's events in the light of October the 7th and understand exactly what's been going on since October the 7th till today. We're going to read this for you. Only 20 days after the October the 7th terrorist atrocity by Hamas in 2023, which Netanyahu facilitated in order to start a war, we stated this: Netanyahu is about to overplay his hand tonight. Everything that has transpired since then is pointing in that direction. Netanyahu has lost the hearts and minds of the West and is rapidly losing any global strategic advantage he may have enjoyed too. Netanyahu's actions toward Iran after his ethnic cleansing in Gaza only strengthen our case that a grand regional settlement for peace is coming. Iran will settle terms with Trump, and Netanyahu will then be left to face the music of his cumulative misdeeds. This was in last week's dispatch. Everything has happened as we said it would. Why? Because what's the bigger picture here, folks? Well, that's on your screens right now. We're calling it the Abrahamic Covenant. This is the bigger picture. Trump and Putin agree that Ukraine, the Russian parts of it, and a denuclearized Iran stays in the Russian sphere of influence. In exchange for what? An Islamic Syria and Afghanistan to fold in the US and NATO sphere of influence. Then, after those things are put into place, then we get the Abraham Accords, which means Israeli, Arab, and Muslim recognition in return for a Palestinian state. That wraps up the Middle East nicely, with a couple of Nobels thrown in time for the children of Abraham to turn to consider the rising Chinese Communist Party. That's the bigger picture. And it's why the winds are blowing in a certain direction. They can whistle against this wind all they like. No one's going to listen to them. There's nothing they can do about it. They fell for the trap of peace. Congratulations. Peace is going to reign. The Abraham Accords are coming. A grand regional settlement for peace is on its way. And all that remains to be said is this: I'm not sure how many times we have to show accurate forecasting over the years to stop being ridiculed, ostracized, shadow banned, and censored. You'd think they'd have all caught up by now. Ultimately, we are going to see peace be enforced against the wishes of the warmongers, and there's absolutely nothing they can do about it, because peace is going to come through strength. That's all for this week's Radical Media Warrior Cream live stream, and as usual, the written version of this live stream will be available tomorrow in the Radical Dispatch for you all, with all the receipts of today published in there with the hyperlinks for all of you to be able to check out for yourselves. We encourage all of you who have subscribed to Radical Media to become premium members of Radical Media, not just free subscribers, and thereby gain access to the behind the paywall content, including the Warrior Creed live stream podcast, and indeed the full Radical Dispatch and all the other behind the scenes content. Until next week, that's all. You've been listening to the Radical Maajid Nawaz.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength. Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Quick service announcement brought to you in part by Warrior.